Good morning. My name is Robin DiPietro Wells, and I am a program coordinator for OneOp. It is my pleasure to welcome you to today's session on practical strategies to support attachment relationships. In case you're joining us for the first time, I'd like to give you a brief tour of our webinar platform so you can find your way around. Hopefully, you're currently able to view the slides that we're sharing. If you're unable to see them or have any other difficulties, please send an email to contact@oneop.org for tech support. As some of you have already done, we look forward to having you join us in the chat pod for conversation and questions. To embed the chat pod so you don't miss any links or conversations, simply place your cursor over the shared slides. You will then see a toolbar pop up across the bottom of your screen. From there, just click the chat bubble icon. When typing questions or comments, please be sure to select everyone from the drop-down options so that everyone is able to view them in the chat pod. Note that the slides and resources are available for download on the event page for today's session. We will be covering continuing education information at the end of the webinar, so please stay tuned if you're interested in continuing education credits or a certificate of attendance. Thank you for joining us as we continue our partnership with the Department of Defense and the U.S. Department of Agriculture to expand the readiness, knowledge, and networks of the professionals supporting our military service members and their families. Today, we have Dr. Tweety Yates with us. Dr. Yates works on the Early Intervention Training Program grant at the University of Illinois and the National Center on Early Childhood Development, Teaching, and Learning contract through Vanderbilt University. She's also a consultant and faculty for the Pyramid Model Consortium. Dr. Yates' primary research interests are supporting caregiver-child interactions, promoting social-emotional language and literacy development, and effective professional development delivery practices. She's been involved in early childhood professional development for over 35 years. Before I turn things over to Tweety, you may want to be sure that you have a copy of the slides that can be found at the bottom of the webinar event page under Event Materials. A link to this page will be placed in the chat momentarily. Additionally, it's important to note that the additional resources page, also on the event materials, like the slides, will contain all of the links that for the resources that Tweety's going to mention today. And there's a lot of them. You all had asked in some of your feedback from previous webinars in this series that we provide really lots of kind of, things that you can take into your day as resources to use. And Tweety is going to bring it. So you will want to have that additional resources sheet. And I will put that event page into the chat in just a moment so you can go grab that. But at this point, I'm going to turn things over to Tweety and mute my microphone so that she can begin.
Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this morning as we continue these conversations around attachment and how we can help support children who have these attachment concerns. So as Robin said, there's a resource list with a lot of resources on that. So hopefully some of those will be new to you and will be things that you can add into your practices. So I'm going to share with you some of the ideas, strategies, and resources that we have tried that we've been using, and some examples around ways that we can support and help repair some of those attachment children haven't had those opportunities to form those attachments, because we know how important that is. And again, hopefully, as you reflect on those great things that you're doing around this, that you'll be able to add some of these ideas and practices to what you're doing, as well as share some of those in the chat as we go. So one of the things that I want us to keep in mind throughout our time together this morning is to remember that we can make a difference. You can make a difference. We really can help begin that process of repairing those attachment concerns with children. Will it be easy? Probably not. Will it be worth it? Absolutely. So some of the things that we've learned is patience is going to be essential. So really figuring out and practicing what helps you just slow down and pause before reacting, not taking things personally, because as we know, these children, that child has already started forming this narrative in their head about who they are, their worth, what relationships are like, what they can expect from relationships. So that starts really early. And, I'm always reminded of in one of our parent-child groups, we had a child who had been adopted at 8 months old. And this particular mom, it was a child within her family. So the mom, when they determined that the mom could no longer, you know, keep this child, the family wanted to keep it within the family. But at 8 months, this child had already been in 6 different homes. So by the time she got to the family member that was adopting her, when she would try to hold her, cuddle her, this 8-month-old would stick her arms straight out, really stiff, like, don't get close to me. Nope, don't do that. So she's already learned. I mean, her experience for 8 months, which isn't very long, has already taught her, nope, I'm going to be careful about this. Don't get close to me. And it took time to get her to trust that. So also just focusing on small steps and celebrating every little sign of success, because while it might feel like a small step to us, for that child, those are huge. And then being consistent, repetitive, and predictable, which is always easier said than done. So the strategies that we're going to be talking about today, they're things you're already doing. We just have to be more intentional about it, more thoughtful, more planful. So we have to do lots and lots of observation and figure out how to support each child, because we know there's not a magic recipe here, because each child's going to be different. Their experiences are different. We've got that child who may have those meltdowns and just really struggle with interacting within the environment, but you also may have that child that, they've learned kind of to be invisible, to just withdraw, that it just is easier for them that way. So you really have to observe and figure out what's working for individual children. So the things that we're going to focus on are these areas. So connecting and building relationships, helping the child feel special, important, and loved. So those two things kind of go together, because as we're connecting, we're doing that in a way that helps that child feel special, important, loved, heard, listened to, right? And then providing those safe, predictable environments that we know are so important for a child who's had the uncertainties, who doesn't have that attachment piece. And then the last part we'll focus on is helping a child learn how to identify and manage their emotion and express their needs, because we know that a lot of children with attachment concerns have a hard time identifying and managing emotions, as well as getting their needs met. So we're going to focus on those. And the reason we're going to pick these areas is all of these help support. These are protective factors, right? So we're going to focus on these because we know that those protective factors help build resilience, and that can make a difference. So I want to show you this video of this one child, and just think about how it kind of taps into every single one of these areas.
¿Necesitas un abrazo de mí? Ay, yo te quiero mucho. Un hug. Love you. I love you, Kian. Espero que te sientas mejor. ¿Puedo hacer algo por ti? ¿Eh? ¿Qué puedo hacer? ¿Qué necesitas? ¿Dame un five? ¿Sí? A ver, dame five. Ay, ¿te sientes mejor? Mira. ¿Tú crees que está tu face así? Pues sí. Ok. ¿Cómo estás? ¿Ya estás mejor? ¡Bravo! Dame pues un five. ¡Oh, otro abrazo! Ok.
So she's built up that connection where he feels safe. They were looking at different little emotion faces and then strategies. And obviously he wanted another hug. So just thinking about the difference, some of those small things that we do can make. So we also want to think about families and how we can build those connections with families, how we can provide resources to families, and how we can support their competence and confidence around being a parent to their child, right? How to support their child. So throughout, there'll be some resources around supporting families. So if we start with this first area, thinking about how do we connect and build relationships? How do we help children feel special, important, and loved? So one of the things I want us to keep in mind here is that difference between relationships and interactions. Because if you think about interactions or relationships, relationships have emotional connections. They have special meaning between two people, right? They create memories. So as a child, I know what to expect from you. It's predictable for me, right? And it takes interactions and connections to build those relationships. But we have to be careful when we think about, if a child's hearing mainly, no, stop, don't do that. Those are interactions. But if that's primarily what they're hearing, those aren't interactions that build relationships. They're not those connections. So we really want to think about how do we build those interactions that really support those connections that are going to build a relationship so that child can have that experience of a positive relationship. So in the last several webinars, you talked a lot about brain development and how important that is, and especially during the first 3 years of life, and how critical that is for building those brain connections, and how important early relationships are, and how that helps wire children's brains to trust others, to love, to feel safe and secure. So thinking about those children who didn't get that and how we work on filling that gap for them. So the good news is that we can still work on those things. We can still work on filling that gap and providing some of those experiences, those healthy relationships, those positive experiences, that consistent and secure environment. And we have to think about not just chronological age, but the emotional age of that child, because even adolescents get stuck at, emotionally younger, right? So we really have to join them at that emotional age and be really careful with our expectations and the kinds of things we're supporting for that child. So throughout, I want us to also think about this. So think about that emotional age of children and how we can support them. So last time, jumped ahead there. You also talked about how every interaction is an intervention. So you think about that for a minute. That's pretty powerful, right? Every interaction we have with a child is an intervention. So basically, every interaction matters. So think about the tone of our voice, how responsive we are, how we're responding, how we respond when a child's really struggling with behavior. It really, again, is going to set up during those years when children are forming that sense of self, whether they're listened to or not, whether they're valued or not. Have we set up those kind of environments where all feelings and emotions are accepted? So they get that message that they're allowed to explore, they're allowed to make mistakes, they're allowed to learn, or they're not, and mostly their needs are met. So that's a pretty powerful thing to think about. It can also be a little scary to think about every interaction is an intervention. So that goes back to how important we are and that we can make a difference here. So one thing that we found is that if we really, during our observations, we really think about And you're right, Alan, that some of those interactions can be interruptions. So we also have to think about that. That's why we're constantly really paying attention to how we're interacting and how we're connecting. So one of the things that we found really helpful is to constantly really record the kinds of things you're observing, because little things might make a big difference. And then other adults that are in that whether it's a center or whatever that setting might be, other adults then can gather that information about the child. So for Lucas, for example, we were learning that he really liked cars and trucks and bulldozers if they didn't make noise. He did not like it at all if they made noise. That's important to know when we're talking about connecting and a child's interest, because we can connect through their interests. But he didn't like to be held. But he did like to have his back rubbed at nap time. So that part was okay. And it really did help him settle and be able to relax and take that nap, or at least just be able to relax, right? So the more we learned about him, we kept adding notes. And those are going to be so important as we kind of move forward and figure out, what really is supporting him. So another thing to think about during this part about connecting and building relationships is bids for connection. So when you think about, it's a pattern of interactions that lead to relationships. And we really want to pay attention to, when is this child reaching out to adults to create a connection? Like, what times of the day? What other things are happening? So often, we sometimes think, all of us, I think, are guilty of this, where we'll think, oh, this child just wants attention, or they're just trying to get attention. So if we've reframed that and we think about that as, it's not attention seeking, it's connection seeking, it really changes the way that we respond. It changes the way that we see that child. So that focus on bids for connection can be a great way to help us build a relationship with children in general, and children who their bids are less obvious or less frequent than others, because we're really going to pay attention to that. And when you switch your thinking from that attention piece to the connection piece, you see the child differently. You see a different child, so it helps us frame it in a very different way. So even that one little piece can be really important. And, it's not realistic to think that we can respond to every single, time a bid might be made by a child, just the reality when you have other children around, if that's your setting. But even in that moment, if you respond in some way, oh, Andrew, I hear you. I can't come right now. I'm helping, Katie do, helping her build blocks, but I'll be there in a minute. So you're still responsive, right? And if you think about your responses as you're sending a message to that child when you respond, and this may be a child who hasn't had someone responding to them, right? So this can be really important again. So thinking about, what kind of messages might you communicate when you respond to bids? I'm interested in you. I understand you. I'm here for you. I want to help you. I want to be with you. I accept you. So you're sending all these messages that are really positive in a way that builds those relationships. Okay. So the other thing that I think can be really important is trying to understand what the child is communicating through their behavior. So, it behavior communicates, behavior has meaning. And it's so important that we try to figure that out, because it's such a great way to connect, or mismatch there, misconnect, right? So I want to tell you a little story here. And so this was in a training, and it was teachers, And we had been meeting several times just for little chunks of time, after school. So this one teacher felt safe enough to say, I have this one child who she just clings to me from the time she gets there in the morning until she leaves in the afternoon. And everywhere I go, she's right there. And it's Miss Jenny, Miss Jenny, Miss Jenny. And it's driving me crazy. And the time before, one of the things that they were going to work on between the sessions was to go back and look at their interactions across children and what types of interactions they were having, how many times were they connecting with children. And she said, what I realized is I was going all day and not saying anything positive to Lila. And I didn't even realize I was doing it. It was just really bothering me. So as we started thinking about, so what do you think her behavior is communicating to you? What is she trying to tell you through that behavior? So she then connected with the family and she found out a lot of information she didn't know, which made a huge difference. So for her, Lila, this is the first time, Lila's 4. It's the first time she's been in a setting with other children. So this is an attachment story that's a little bit different from some of the others because her family had really worked on attaching with her. She was an only child, very sick at birth, so had been in the hospital a lot, had been in intensive care a lot. The hospital she was at was like an hour and a half from where they lived, and they only had certain times when they could be with her because of her medical issues. And she had had surgeries. So this had been off and on for like 4 years until finally, the doctors felt like she was at a really great place and it would be fine for her to be in a setting with other children. So as she's finding this out, what along with the parents, she realized is there was something about Miss Jenny that Lila connected with. She felt safe. And of course, Miss Jenny was like, man, when I think about how I've been interacting, I don't know what it is about me that she feels safe, with, but I really want to build on this now. So again, thinking about, I'm not just seeking attention, I'm seeking connection with you and I feel safe with you. So that completely changed the way Jenny was looking at Lila's behavior and to be more intentional because she had kind of lost sight of what's special about Lila because she was struggling with interacting with her. So started out by just writing some special things about Lila and then being super intentional about, I'm going to read Lila's favorite book. And at that particular time, Z is for Moose happened to be Lila's favorite book. And it was one of the few moments that they would see Lila really laugh or really enjoy kind of being in that setting. So reading a book to her favorite book, she was going to find time during the day to make that happen. She was going to tell Lila how much she missed her when she was out sick and really mean it. And she was going to ask Lila to help give her props for story time. So as she started being really intentional about these things and what happened when she just found times of the day when she could be more attentive and connect more, it made a big difference for Lila and Lila kind of branching out and not needing Miss Jenny quite as much because they then went on to work on ways that she could play with some of the other children, how she could join in play with Miss Jenny staying close by her and supporting her until she was kind of comfortable doing that. But it completely changed her interactions with this child, her connections. So that's, that makes a huge difference. But again, it takes time and it takes being intentional. Another strategy, is just following the child's lead because we know that when we do that, it makes them feel important and special. Just think about even copying the sounds that an infant's making and getting that back and forth going. And if an infant's not used to that, how they'll, kind of give you this look like, wow, look what I can make you do. You're copying all my sounds, and they'll start trying different sounds. So just figuring out, what is the child interested in? What are they playing with? How can I join in their play and just follow their lead? Sometimes that means just sitting by them, being silent and just joining in play. And then, with other children, it really is joining in the language part of that and building on that piece. But again, that's kind of knowing how to support each child. Okay. So here are two resources that we have found that families really liked, and it gave them ideas of things that they could do with these are the Center for Early Literacy Learning was a grant actually that ended a long time ago, but they still have tons of resources on that grant, and they're all broken down: infant, toddler, and preschoolers. So, and all these links are on the resource sheet, but they have something called POPs. And the reason they're called POPs is because they don't take much time. So they're just little pops of information, little pops of things you can do, when you're walking to the school bus, or, those kinds of things I might say. So for a family member that might not have had much of that growing up, this gives them lots of ideas. And again, it doesn't take a lot of time. It's just that connecting moment and how important that is. So those might be useful for some of the families that you work with. We've also developed our own little pops, where, maybe it's too much to have 4 or 5. Maybe it's just one little pop. If you do home visits, you might just leave a little pop every week, just one little pop, So again, just kind of knowing families. The other one is the Illinois Early Intervention Clearinghouse, which also has a wealth of information and lots of resource sheets and fun ideas of things that families can do with their child. So these next two slides are resources from a parent-child group that we had. And I'm going to show you 2 of these. They're actually on the website. There are 9 examples. These are plans for parent or caregiver child groups focused on birth to 3. And I put this particular one up here because just think about, helping parents understand how important they are to their child, and how being that secure base for their child helps their child, feel safe. It helps them explore and learn, and how they might keep looking back as they kind of venture out, because they know that that parent or that caregiver is their secure base. So the way these are set up, it gives some ideas for an opening discussion that you might use in a parent-child group. It gives ideas for some activities that you could use that would help families play with their child, and then focus on really learning something about their child when it comes to, feeling secure and safe when they're around. And then some ideas for closing that conversation, and then reflecting on how you could do some of those things at home. So this next one I put in here, so same resource, but thinking about how development. So this comes from a lot of, over the years, a lot of families doing focus groups and getting feedback from families, but how just providing some developmental information, and then setting up the environment so they can play with their child. And for example, on this one, really think about how I explore my environment. So one child may do that in a very different way from another child, based on their age, based on just the child, again, based on that emotional age of that child. But parents can really try some things with their child and see what happens. And so, parents have said over and over, I feel like I learned so much about my child. We even had one parent who came afterwards and said, I really thought my child was trying to drive me crazy on purpose. And now I understand that's not what he was doing at all. And I really think I can do this. So just providing that developmental information in a positive, safe atmosphere and letting them try some of those things out, letting them learn about their child and how their child does things and how they can support their child can make a huge difference. And if any of you are familiar with that survey that 0 to 3 did years ago, they did kind of a random survey across the country of parents, and what they found was, parents underestimated how soon their children were capable of feeling complex emotions. So things like being affected by parents' moods or affected by shouting and violence, they thought, a child had to be a year or older. But they overestimated some of those things that, some of those important developmental skills. So things like, can share and take turns with other children. 20% said 6 months or younger. 23% said 1 year, right? Can resist the desire to do something that parents have forbidden. 18% said 6 months or younger. 18% said a year. So this is especially important for us because the way that parents interpret the meaning of their child's behavior can influence the sensitivity of their responses. And then that's gonna, that also happens when and how they discipline. So if a parent thinks a child is capable of greater self-control than he actually is, and in reality that ability is still 6 months, a year, 2 years away, it can lead to more of a punitive rather than a supportive response, just because I'm expecting my child to be able to do that. So providing that developmental information can be really, really important. And these are just some resources that might help based on kind of the kinds of things that you do. So continuing on this supporting connections, thinking about military families in general, and how just when you have an important family member that's deployed, like how do we keep that connection? How do we help that family realize how important it is to keep those connections for the children and that family? Keep those connections with that family member who's deployed. So this is just an example of using a book. So love spots. So love spots is just where the spots on the uniform are little love spots, and how those little spots remind that parent, that grandparent, whoever that might be, of how much they love that child. So they're having these conversations with the child before they're deployed. So, you can make a little book with pictures of that child doing different things with that family member. So you can continually, while that person's not there, you can continually, look at those pictures, talk about those pictures. You can make the little love spots like in this example, and then make enough of those little love spots that you can bring those out at different times. You could put them in a lunchbox. You could, put it under a pillow at night, but just keeping that connection there. So, what they learn is even when that person can't physically be with them, they can still be connected to that person. So this one example, I'll show you quickly here, but this was, these two love spots are actually from this family. But one of the things that this child loved doing was reading Brown Bear with his dad. So they actually videotaped dad reading Brown Bear with the child before he left. But this was from the school, the center that he was at, and he always wanted the Brown Bear book. So they videotaped this and then they sent it to dad who was deployed. So think about being the dad and getting this. And when you aren't physically there, and how that helps also, that just that connection with dad.
Let's turn it here. Turn it the other way, sweet boy. Here, this might make it work a little better. We flip it. Bless you, buddy. There's your white dog. Go ahead. Black sheep. Yeah. Here you go. Right here. So, goldfish.
Okay, so again, just think of all those things that we can do to keep that connection there. And, books are there's research that shows that fiction books in particular help children, like they see other children. Sometimes they connect with those experiences, sometimes they don't, but they see other children in these stories, these characters, and how they handle different situations. So when we think about kind of building that toolbox of strategies for children, books are a great way to do that based on how we're using those books, because they can be really engaging to children and really help them when they're also learning different strategies. So 2 other books, The Invisible String, as well as The Kissing Hand, would be ones that kind of build on that. Even when you can't physically be with a child, that you can still be connected with a child. So thinking about how you could use some of those kinds of things. This was an idea from a teacher who made some little handle with care stickers. And she told the families at the beginning of the year, she said, I know there are so many things going on right now that are just hard. So, you don't have to explain to me what's going on. But if the child's had a rough night, whether that's just they didn't sleep well, or there's just lots of things going on in this household right now, all you got to do is stick that little handle with care sticker on their back or backpack, whatever, and that will let me know that I need to spend extra time with that child. I need to really handle that child with care that day. So again, I don't have to know all that's going on, but just that handle with care will make me know I just need to focus on that child. Um, you know, again, connect with that child more throughout the day. And she said it was amazing kind of what happened when parents did that, because some parents would share, some didn't, but at least she knew that child just needed a little extra love that day. So I think that's an easy idea also. Okay, so that kind of gets us through that some ideas, and with our time, these are only some ideas, right? But around connecting. But if we do nothing else, that connecting piece is probably the most important thing we can try to do. And keeping in mind that often children with attachment concerns need those connections the most, but they also resist those connections the most just because of not trusting that. And that's where we can't give up. We have to keep trying to build those connections with children, and connections in a way that allow them to experience those relationships. So let's just think a minute here about, we know how important creating safe, predictable environments are, especially for a child who hasn't been in a predictable environment. So, and keeping in mind that even when we try our best to set up environments that we think are supporting this child and being safe, that it doesn't necessarily mean that child's going to feel safe right off the bat. So again, that's that observation and really continuing to gather information about the child. So think about daily schedules and routines and how important those are when it comes to providing predictable structure to a day, teaching children what to expect, what's going to happen when they're there, those visual reminders to children of what they should be doing, letting children know what's coming next, and the importance of pairing visuals with verbal, because we know that when we do that, it helps children internalize the routines and schedules more quickly, which helps them cope, which helps them feel safe. And visuals break down things into chunks, so it's easier to process, because I may hear what you're saying verbally and still be trying to process that while you've already gone on to something else. So when I have that visual with the words, the verbal part of that, then it just makes it easier for me to be successful. So if you look on the bottom here, the one with the train, so this is a child that loves trains. And as each part of the day happened, they would cover up that part of the day. So you know that's already happened. This is still to come. So again, I'm going to build on what he's interested in or what she's interested in. And because I know that's going to pull them towards that a little bit more, right? And then on the end here, so Caleb had a classroom schedule on a small card, and it had Velcro on the front and the back. And as he completed each activity, he moved the picture from the front of the card to the back of the card to indicate that the activity had ended. It was on a lanyard that could be clipped to his shirt or his belt loop, so he could carry it around with him throughout the day. So think about that and sharing those kind of ideas and strategies with families. Then the one with the little cars on it, that was where they had their schedule on it. And if you see where the raindrop is, I'm thinking about how hard it is, how transitions can be hard, and when there's a change in the schedule. So, this one was where they put the raindrops up because it was raining. So where they usually go outside, they couldn't go outside. So they talked about it. They had children, think about like, okay, why do you think the raindrops are here when we've got it on the playground? So you're preparing them ahead of time. You're not waiting until right when that happens to talk about the change, but we're talking about it in the morning. We're talking about it before it happens. So it makes it a little bit easier for that child to make that transition. And yes, so that, Robin, your comment about, these schedules and visuals and things benefit all of us from all ages, right? So she has a middle and high schooler who still make their own versions of their visual schedules and routines. So just how important that can be. One more idea, if a child really is struggling with kind of getting through the day and those schedules and routines, especially coming from a more chaotic kind of environment, is making a book, with that child, where you take pictures of that child going through each part of the schedule. And so then they have that book can go home with them, come back with them, but they have that book that they can look at, and it shows them going through each part of that schedule. So the predictability of a general schedule might not provide enough structure for the child. So think about routines within routines, because even at arrival time, think of all the routines that happen. So at arrival, they put things in their cubbies, they wash their hands, they sign in, they might have a question of the day that they answer, and then they do table time. So on the schedule, it just says arrival, but there are a lot of things that happen during arrival. So, again, the importance of that visual and the verbal. Let's break those routines down for a child who might be just need more support with that, right? So just for example, the routine within the routine would be for washing your hands. You get the soap, and I know those little visuals are hard to see down there, but you get the soap, you turn on the water, you wash your hands, you turn off the water, and you dry your hands. So when routines are broken down like that, I can be more successful doing it. I feel safer and I feel more competent doing it. And those visuals are going to help me do that. So that can really help get through each part of the day successfully, right? So diaper time, I wanted just to just throw this in here quickly because, diaper time we often rush through, but that's such an amazing time. to have that one-on-one connection, right? To have that time where we can use a gentle voice, we can use a gentle touch. So, or, I mean, sometimes we have to be careful with touch, right? Just based on different children. But, and keeping in mind that an infant who's been left, not responded to. So I have a wet diaper, I'm crying, but nobody comes, nothing happens. The diaper time may take a little bit to get into that predictability of that particular routine. And just think about if you had a particular saying that you said every time you change their diaper, a little song, a little saying, like the Josie, Josie, I love you, Josie, Josie, yes, I do, then that helps support that predictability part. I want to show you this video also. So think about what strategies this caregiver uses.
Remy, look. Can you go change your diaper? Come on. Let's go. Can I change your diaper? Change your diaper and then you can go back to playing, okay? Here you go. Randy? What are you doing again? What's that for? What's that for?
Okay. Anybody want to put in chat what they saw? Okay, I'm going to just share kind of what I think is important about that. She walks up to her where she sees it. She has that diaper. Yeah, she physically shows that diaper. So she's got the nonverbal as the diaper, as the signal, as that visual. She always does that. You notice she gets where the child sees her. So she's not just picking the child up and, which can be shocking to a child. So she talks through it. You're right. She's telling her what happens next. It's very loving and gentle, that eye contact and touch with her, right? So that can make a huge difference in knowing what to expect and to have that routine be a positive thing. Okay, the loving voice, yes, giving her hand, not just picking her up. So thinking about it's those small things again, right, that are going to make a big difference for that child. So think about nap time and bedtime. So nap time can also be a really hard time for a child and attachment concerns. So just quickly, this Sophie and Maxie was a child at a center-based program who would not, she just nap time just was really, really tough for them. They had a cot, but she was petrified. I mean, when it became nap time. So the more that they tried to figure out how to support her, they finally figured out with her that if she took a flashlight and she looked under the cot and around the cot, then she felt okay. So she would lay down. At first, she wouldn't go to sleep, but at least she would lay down on the cot. She had her little Lovey, her little pink stuffed animal there that she loved, but they let her decorate the flashlight. So every time that it was time to do nap time, then she would, take her little flashlight and they would look under the cot, all around the cot. And then that helped her feel safe. Might not work for other child, but it really worked for them, right? And so look, that great United Through Reading app is a great way for family members to record books for their children. So nap time, bedtime is a great idea for having a recorded message or book from a parent who's physically not there, right? So the other part is a resource that you have on your sheet, just again, kind of helping families. If you know bedtime's a hard routine, then helping them with some visuals that work for their bedtime routine that would make it easier for the child to know what's coming. These also are additional resources from the pyramid site. So, and all of these kinds of things, I think you have to really think about, that particular family, because these resources in particular have a lot of words on them. They have great ideas, but they have a lot of words on them, and we don't always read all that, right? So, you know, thinking about how you could pull out some of these ideas and again do that little pop sheet with just a couple of ideas that are popped of things you can do to help your child have a successful bedtime. Or yes, that it says don't read Monster Under My Bed for nap time. You're right. So again, just being really intentional and thoughtful about what we're doing. So another opportunity to connect during routines of the day might be a goodbye routine, just figuring out something fun and special for that child. So it might be something like give a hug, ladybug, see you later, alligator, but what is that special thing for that child that's going to connect you? And you have that opportunity to do that special little saying that you do every day, because that's that predictability, that's that safety part, but also letting them know how you're going to be so excited to see them the next day, right? So, or bye-bye songs. Yes, Anne, it's a great suggestion. Okay.
Hey, Tweety, there's a question in the chat about how do you find the strategy that is like a key that works for each child?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's those observations, because again, we have to find what's going to connect for that particular child. So that's where and sometimes it's taken a while for us to figure it out. And, even with things like this, it doesn't have to be that kind of thing, that kind of saying. It might be a special handshake. It might be a high five, whatever it is that works for that child. Or you might have a child who, again, does not yet want to be touched, doesn't feel safe doing that. So that's where just some of those sayings or they're not there yet, just making sure, that they know that you're so excited about, you can't wait to see them the next day. Trying to build those connections. So I do think there's not one answer, Stephanie, for finding that strategy, but it's like trying different strategies until something connects. And to me, and I know I keep saying this, sound like a working record, but that observation, writing those things down, is what's helped us figure out, try little things. If some little part of something works, then how can we build on that? Okay. So routines, we know that choice is important, but just think about that opportunity for a child to feel like they have some sense of control over something in their life, right? So think of all the opportunities that you have across a schedule where you can support choices. And, the good morning thing, like a lot of people do the greeter helper now, where a child greets and, like in the morning when they come in, they have different ways that they want to be greeted. They can choose with that. They can choose how they want to be greeted. Even that's a huge start to the morning about having some control over even when I walk in the door, right? So yes, okay, I'm going to say here quickly what Alan commented about the last one. Check with parents on preferences. Also, when any strategy may be needed, check with parents, which is a great idea. And even those little forms that people do in the beginning of the year a lot with, getting information about, what are children's preferences? What are they interested in? That can also give us lots of clues about how we might connect with that child. So thank you for sharing that. Okay. Again, transitions can be hard. So think about all those different things you can do that'll help the child. We know movement's really important, and movement alone can help calm a child. So even those things like, you can have a cup and have the little sticks in them where they have different things like jump like a kangaroo, stomp like an elephant, hop like a frog. And so they pull one out, and that's what they do to get to the next part of the day. So think they're learning vocabulary. It's also giving them an opportunity to move, but it's helping them get some movement during the day. And then the first then, all, that can really help with transitioning from one part of the day to the next. Think about supporting play skills, because often children might not have had opportunities to play, nor opportunity they might not have had materials or toys to play with. So how can you support, again, individual children again? So you might have to show them how to actually use or play with toys, like in this first photo. The second one, you might start with just one other child in a play situation, in an interaction situation, and then have an adult right there supporting them, right? Again, we might be working on some of these play skills like that third photo, but I'm still going to stay close by and support that child, support the other children around doing that, to really build that sense of competence and confidence in being able to do that. And then that bottom photo is one teacher she took photos of all the children in the classroom and laminated them and put them on those little metal clips. And as she was working with children on those play skills, she would use like different children from the classroom, just those little figures, and they could kind of work through what you might say, what you might do, how I might ask a child if I want to play with them, or a toy they might have. And then that sort of helped them. That was that step in between when they would then go actually try to use some of those skills with children. Yeah, and Stephanie, I think you're right that, for example, working with foster children, they often don't know how to play with toys that are for their age group. So really figuring out how to support that, so it makes it a little easier. And observe children across schedules and routines. What kind of changes can you make that make it a little bit easier for them, that better supports that child in being successful at some of these things? So this particular child, so he would just stand back and watch. He wouldn't pull in with children. So as they were kind of working with him on, how to join in play when he wanted to do that, they also had to think about the fact he did not like for other children to be close to him. So putting the masking tape on the floor helped children kind of figure out where to stand. And so they weren't so close to each other. And so that made it much more comfortable. And he actually got to then have some positive experiences in playing with and interacting with the other children. Okay. So just quickly through, this start, we know that it's essential that having expectations and rules, that's a great way to build children's sense of security, but they don't always know what is expected of them in different settings, especially if they haven't had that again at home. So thinking about how expectations can give the children the why, like, why are we doing these kinds of things? And rules can give them the what. So practicing those kinds of things, reading books about those. What does it mean to be safe? What does it mean to be kind? What does it mean to be a learner? So really helping them better understand that. Here's another resource that one of the reasons I put this resource in here and that I like this resource is because there's resources for families and resources for providers, practitioners, because as a family member, or as a practitioner, if I want some more ideas around connecting with my child, these are routines that are already happening. So how I can build on those. So this gives me things I can say. So it doesn't just say, talk about what you're doing. It gives me an example of how I can talk about what I'm doing. So a great way to build those skills again. Okay. Wanted to share this with you. And this is one of those things you're going to have to just take some time and look at this resource, because I know that this is going to be throwing this big old resource out you here. But Positive Solutions for Families is actually from a parent it's one of the pyramid resources, but it's a parent group and it's preschool focused. Again, you can think about though how this applies to kind of all age children, but there's 7 sessions, and the 4th one is the power of routines. So as we're talking about routines, it really made me think about how the feedback from families has been that they love this session on routines. And a lot of them will say, I never really had routines before, or I never really thought about the routines that happen across the day. So this one, I put some examples of there are 2 apply it and try it ideas for this power of routine session. And that first one is where you take a routine, and it might even be a routine that's harder for that family, and you break it down into steps, kind of that routines within routines that we talked about. And then you help come up with visual cues. And then that other one is, how am I going to teach my child this routine? So you come up with different strategies and ideas for them to do that. So because that was so successful, I wanted to share that with you. And it's the materials have, you know, the whole session. So ideas for, there's a PowerPoint, there's resources, there's handouts for families. And there's also a family routine guide. So the family routine guide is another great resource because it looks at different routines, again, more preschool focused, but looks at different routines. And you think about, you know, so, okay, what behaviors sometimes happen during those routines? How can I prevent that from, why might my child be doing that? How could I prevent that behavior? How might I respond? And how might I teach them a new way so that that routine isn't as much of a struggle, right? So this, again, is something, you know, for you to take some time and look at. It's not something I would just hand to a parent because it's 62 pages long and it's got tons of resources, routines on it. So getting dressed and undressed, brushing teeth, taking a bath, bedtime, going places like sitting in a car seat, because we know that can be hard, cleanup time. So all of those different routines have several different behaviors that might happen during that routine. So if we know that a family is struggling with bedtime, then this can give us some additional resources that we could share with the family. So hopefully that'll be a nice resource. Okay, so time-wise here, we're going to keep on moving. So let's think about that last part about emotional regulation, like learning about emotions, learning, you know, beginning to learn how to manage some of those. And what can we do? So if you think about what children need, they need to know words for what they're feeling. They need to know, what it feels, what it feels like. And then they need strategies, right? So when we go from I need words to need what to know what it feels like, I'm beginning to link some of those words with what it feels like. And then I need strategies once I figure that out, right? Okay, so let's think about what emotion words are children using or this child using. How are they using them? Does it make sense in the way they're using them? What am I teaching? What words am I teaching this child? You know, we know that when children have that wider range of emotion vocabulary, that they have an easier time discriminating their own feelings as well as feelings of others, right? And it's hard to manage your emotions when you don't have the words for emotions. This is another resource and example of for older children that has emotions as well as kind of the sensation of those emotions. So as they're trying to figure out that label for emotion, but what does it feel like on the inside there? Okay, so I'm gonna show you a little bit of this, but I want to say something before we watch this video quickly here, is that she says, oh, you're a good boy. That we want to be really careful with, right? We don't want to use those good and bad words. But outside of that, look how this wonderful interaction is and how with an infant, she's using some of those emotion vocabulary.
You look happy now. You're not sad no more. I think you're angry. Langston. I'm sorry. I was talking. I'm sorry. Oh, there you go. They're gonna smell.
Okay, so just that taking that moment, think about that connection. Listen to how that baby's responding back to her, because I have that moment there. So another resource here, just another way, especially if you do home visits, those kinds of things for families. And, you can take pictures of children, those kinds of things. Taking advantage of everyday moments. So, Kara, are you feeling a little scared? Would you like me to help you? It might not be so scary if I help, is that okay? Can I help you? Those kinds of things. I put the singing songs in here because the power of music and for children, and especially from a calming standpoint also. But this particular teacher, once children were really starting to get that the label of emotions and then what they did with it, she made a classroom book. Each child went through like these different emotions and what they did. And then periodically she would pull it out and they would draw a child out of a bag that they had, and they would use that child's examples to sing the song. So what it did is it really showed, not only am I recognizing the emotion and what I can do, but then you got to learn all different ways that children did that. Thinking about the importance of how children are feeling in the morning throughout the day, and especially that child with attachment issues, how you can really support them throughout the day and figuring that out. If you use a mirror, sometimes having a mirror by a check-in feelings can really help them see as they label that. What's their face look like as they're trying to figure out what that emotion is? If you have family members who have a hard time reading the cues, that's another fun one. Just try different things, take pictures, and then together try to figure out what emotion that child's showing. Being an emotion detective can be a great way to just really engage a child in learning about emotions and starting to discriminate emotions. These two books, A Little Spot of Feelings and Roaring Mad Riley, both have great examples of that you can engage children in. This literally is taking construction paper, making a little hole, a little bit bigger, and putting children's faces on it. And then they can be an emotion detective and try to figure out with the little cues, because each time you turn, you get more cues. If you take pictures of children in the classroom, it can really help that child who's struggling with that a little bit to learn, okay, that's what Darius looks like when he's happy. So I know when he does that he's happy. There's sensory wise, Play-Doh can be a good thing. So, there's some Play-Doh mats through the pyramid model that you can download and laminate and use with children. I'm going to speed up a little here because there's a couple of things I really want to get to. So books, again, can be such a great way to help children process, to see how, to see how other children are handling these, other characters are handling different things here. So that example. I also want to go back just a second here. This down at the bottom, who's your favorite character? That's a great way to continue conversation. So if a child really gets engaged with the book, make a little mat. We call them like talking mats, but make a little mat, take some of the characters, and then you can talk about like, what's your favorite character? Like in this one, they all have different worries. So, which one do you relate to the most? So you can really get more conversations going. Okay. Being careful with saying things like you're okay, because we're trying to teach children about emotions and getting them to label different emotions. And we've set up this atmosphere where all emotions are okay, right? And then we say things like something happens and we go, "You're okay." That's really confusing through the eyes of a child, because I'm thinking, "No, I'm not. And you're just telling me I'm okay and I'm not okay." So, really acknowledging those feelings. And, even like, so this child, his blocks, he's been working on that block structure and somebody runs by and they don't mean to, but they knock it down and he's really upset. And we're like, "Oh, you're okay. You can rebuild it." No, it's like acknowledging, "Oh, that's really frustrating," or "You're really sad that that happened. Let's think of something you can do now." These books are great examples. So you will have these, in your PowerPoint, but these are great to use with children with attachment issues. And You Weren't With Me is a great one. That's a great one. That's a great reminder for adults about what it might feel like for a child when you physically aren't there. So thinking about how you can use some of those. Okay, let me, a couple more things here. So I need to know what it feels like. So they're learning names, right? And um, using just little figures, because different children feel emotions in different ways. So helping them really start to think about when they're happy, where do they feel it? When they're angry, where do they feel it? So they start to recognize in their body when they feel those things. Thinking about, we don't always do, what does it feel like to be tense? What does it feel like when I'm relaxed? Because that also can make a big difference, as children are learning about their emotions, right? And then make an emotion causes flip book. And that's where, so they're learning names, they're starting to learn what it feels like, but they start putting a book together around like, what causes me to feel angry? What causes me to feel happy? And so then again, that helps them start making those connections. And then that next step of building about what they can do. So they have their own little flip book. You can also do that across a classroom, because you can again see, somebody gets blocks knocked over and it doesn't bother them. Somebody else it does. So you can see different reactions. Okay, strategies. I need strategies here. Just thinking about giving children different strategies. So books can do that. They can give them a lot of different strategies. We can practice those. That particular resource gives different activities to do around that particular book. Calming strategies, those things like smell the flower, blow the pinwheel, you can kind of do anywhere. Also thinking about muscle pressure, just that hugging yourself. Just that muscle pressure can help children calm themselves. So there's also a book called 1, 2, 3, A Calmer Me. It's by Colleen Patterson. And in that book, it has a little rhyme that's like 1, 2, 3, a calmer me. 1, 2, 3, I hug me. 1, 2, 3, relax and breathe. 1, 2, 3, a calmer me. So it has this little rhyme that's repeated throughout. And that automatically has that little hug part in it. So that might be a fun way to engage a child in doing that hug. If they have things that those loveys or things that they're attached to, like a bear or a rabbit, try to find things that are going to match that, because they're going to be more likely to try those things if it's related to those things that they're already connected to. Head Start has a whole collection of regulation visuals, again, that you can use to try to figure out what's going to work with a child, and sharing those with families and those conversations again with families. The turtle technique you may be familiar with, but again, that's just another example of something that you can try with children that has the steps all laid out. It has a story that goes with it. Tucker Turtle Takes Time to Tuck and Think. It has a home version of that you can share with families. This is what an individual child was using, because she did better when she could, like with a schedule, she would take off her schedule, put it in the envelope. So she really loved Tucker, but she was really struggling with the steps. So this way it made it easier for her to be able to stop, take the deep breaths, and then try to come up with a new solution. not every child's going to connect with Tucker, but we have lots of children who love bulldozers. So Buddy the bulldozer uses the same steps as Tucker, but Buddy's engine overheats when he gets upset. So he has to figure out how to cool his engine back down. So this goes back to that trying to figure out like what's going to connect with this child, what's going to give this child opportunities to practice some of these. Cozy corners and calming areas can be really important for children to, have opportunities to begin to self-regulate, right? So if you look at these are all kind of different areas. They're all kind of open. So they have lots of ways to enter. They have different materials, different things in them. And these are the kinds of things that we want to make sure that we teach children how to use, that we explore them, we show them how to use the materials that are there. One thing we want to be really careful with any kind of regulation station, cozy corner, is that it's never used for punishment, or that children see that as an area that they're doing something wrong, they were punished. That we don't ever want that to happen. That completely defeats the purpose of those calming areas and helping children learn how to kind of self-regulate. So, I wanted to show you this one also because they had the turtle, they had puppets, they also had headphones here because they had a child who needed just those headphones for a few minutes. But I also want to just quickly share a story that happened recently in a room that I was in, a classroom I was observing in, and there was one child that we had been working with who had a lot of attachment concerns, but he was really starting to have some successes, and instead of just kind of having meltdowns and losing it when he would get upset about something, he was really starting to use some of those calming strategies. And he loved the turtle and the turtle puppet, but the day that I was in there, he got upset, but instead of screaming and throwing like he had before, he went into they called it the cozy corner, because she didn't have a lot of room, a space in her room. So what she did is there was a bookcase, and she had found a box that fit behind that bookcase. It was as wide as the wall. So it's the bookcase and the wall. And she put cozy things in there. She had the turtle book. She had squishy toys, all those kinds of things. Really cozy area, but there was only one way in and out. So this little boy, who we're starting to see some successes with, goes in the cozy corner. And the teacher's so excited. And so she waits a few minutes, and then she goes over to kind of support him in what he's doing. And she gets down on his level, and he completely lost it. And we're going, oh my gosh, what just happened? Then we realize this is a child who has attachment concerns, but he's also experienced trauma. When she got down, she blocked the entrance. That's not what she was trying to do, but she blocked the entrance. He goes into survival mode, right? So that was a lesson learned. That was not intentional at all, but I think that's such an important point. When you have these calming corners or regulation stations, whatever you're calling them, make sure that they don't have just one way in and one way out, that they're either open, like these examples are, or if it's more, this one has, it's got the holes on all sides so you can come out, but that you don't do one where it's really closed in. Okay, just again, kind of individualizing for a child. This worked for him. So they had bubbles available. They had a little poster on the wall where he could do wall push-ups, count to 10. They had numbers there. So providing those supports. Don't forget about problem solving, because, as they're learning these emotions and the names for these emotions and what it feels like and these strategies, they get better and better at problem solving. So they're not going to automatically come up with different solutions. So we want to teach those solutions, but it's going to make it a whole lot easier for them to calm down if they also kind of have that emotional literacy part, right? The better they get at doing that. So we want to build that habit of positive descriptive feedback, because that gives children feedback, especially if I've not been in these kind of settings. I don't know what the expectations are, so I'm just learning. So it gives them lots and lots of positive feedback that they might not have gotten before. Again, keeping in mind, some children aren't going to want to, they don't want you to say those things out loud to them. So it might be a high five, it might be a thumbs up across a room, but we really want to get in that habit of positive descriptive feedback for children. These are additional resources for families around this kind of emotional literacy part. And a lot of these are things that not only we can share, again, think about families and how you want to share this information, but how we can share this information with families on how they can support their child. But a lot of these strategies we can use as adults to help us stay calm. Again, kind of thinking of that attention seeking versus connection seeking, and how important it is for us to stay calm when they're upset. So they have models of being calm. It's part of that co-regulation that leads to self-regulation that they might not have gotten. Okay, so just to end here, you know, I love this quote from Rachel Robertson at Bright Horizons. And there'll be times when things don't go just right. We'll make some mistakes indeed, try as we might. But mistakes are okay. Mistakes help us grow. They help us to learn and to know what we know. So I think that that's such a great ending to this. Is it's not easy, but it's so important, and we can make a difference. And we're going to make mistakes, but we're going to learn from those mistakes. So just thank you. Thank you for all that you do around supporting young children.
All right. Thank you so much, Tweety. This has been really, really, really fabulous. And before I move to talking about continuing ed and certificates of attendance, I want to remind you all, and I'm going to put in the chat the direct links for the slides and the direct links for the additional resources, because I know that's what you came for, and Tweety really delivered. So the link to the slides is going into the chat right now. And you will see that on those slides, they're a PDF. So those links on the slides are clickable, which means they'll go to the resources. Some of those resources, I couldn't put 16 links on a slide. So instead, here is the additional resources document. And when you click on that, you'll notice that that document says slide 18, and then it'll label the resource and it gives you another clickable link. For the positive families, for positive solutions for families, it's important to understand when you go to there, you will want to download the zip file that and then opens into your machine. There's a whole bunch of resources in that zip file. And in that, you'll have to search through those files to find the resource you want specifically that was mentioned in the webinar, because it's a zip file that downloads. I can't give you the exact link to the exact handout you wanted in that, okay? So that's how you can access all of those resources. If you get confused, if you can't find what you're looking for, email us. I'm going to give you that address in just a second too, and let us know, and we can walk you through it. But it is all there, I promise, and we are more than happy to get it to you. But you just might have to poke around, because we're all limited by the amount of links we have available to us when it's like that Positive Families for Solutions that's downloaded in a zip file. Okay, so continuing, let's actually, before I go to continuing education, I want to remind you that we are developing more high quality programming for this year. And we hope to have details to share with you very soon. But for now, you can go back to any of the 2023 series on infant and early childhood mental health and access any of those webinars recordings on demand. Most of them all still carry some type of CE credit. And Coral, if you could advance the slide to show the 2023 series. There it is. So you can go to that website right there at the bottom, where you'll be able to access the other 3 webinars that were in this series. and keep up to date for what's coming in 2024 through our website. Also, if you got information about this training through your employer, I promise you, your employer will likely get information from me about 2024 stuff when I have it ready to go. Okay, you've been waiting for CE credits. Ready? Okay, you got to listen real close, especially if you've never navigated our process before. Okay, it's a two-step process. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to complete an evaluation, and I'm going to tell you how to get there in a minute. After you submit the evaluation, you'll get a box that pops up. It's an end of survey message. It's going to give you several different links. You'll click the link for the kind of credit you need. Okay. So if you need EI or early childhood credits, you'll click that one. If you want the credit for the UT social work credits, you'll click that one. If you just want a certificate of attendance that does not confer any kind of CE credit, you would click that one. All right. Once you click that, it will take you to another spot where you fill out some more information. You might need to take a post test. And when you finish that, an email will be sent to you with the certificate. Okay. That sometimes will take 24 to 48 hours. All right. Some of your emails may send that certificate to your spam folder. So if you don't have it in 24 to 48 hours, check your spam folder, check your junk folder. And if you still don't have it, send me an email. I'll give you that address here in just a second too. Okay. So now you're going to go back to the webinar event page, which I'm going to put in the chat right now. When you scroll down to the section labeled Continuing Education Credit, there is a button right above it. It's purple. It says Continuing Education. You'll click on that button. It will direct you to the evaluation portion. And then the process that I just described will happen. Okay. If you don't see the purple button, refresh your browser because it's there. I just checked. If when you click the purple button, you get an error message, read that message. It may mean that your firewalls on your system aren't letting you get to it. That's nothing we can do anything about. You got to talk to your IT people. If you've had your people investigate it, it still gives you an error message, screenshot the error message and email it to me, and then we can try to help you from there, okay? The email that you'd want to use to reach out to us is right here, all right? That with CE credits, can't find the slides, need the resources, whatever it might be, you can email me there and I will do my best to help point you in the right direction and get you what you need. All right. Okay. I think that covers all the CE things that you need to know. Finally, last thing for today, be sure to visit us at the website, oneop.org, to explore upcoming events, articles, resources, and more. When we have our 2024 series ready to go and I have it all figured out, which I'm working so very hard on right now, it will be in our website. It may also show up on social media. So you can find us at Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and we're also on YouTube. We're going to stick around for just a few more minutes for those of you who need to grab links or information or need to ask a quick question in the chat. Feel free to leave it there, but we want to thank you all again for being here. And again, Tweety, thank you so much for being here and for helping us out and for all of the wisdom you bring, including all of these resources. And yes, Tweety's email is on the slides, but we'll drop it in the email in the chat in just a minute. Regarding the question around accessing certificates for two different entities, yes, you can. If it gives you a glitchy situation where it says you can't get there, email me, please, and I'll be more than happy to send you the link that you need for the type of credit, because there are some settings in there that might say that you can't do that, but you can indeed. It's just that Qualtrics sometimes plays silly. But if you email me, I'd be more than happy to help you. Tweety's email. Coral, can you go back to the slide with Tweety's email?
I can add it.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. All right. Got it.
All right. We'll stick here for a couple of minutes so that you can grab Tweety's email or any information you might need. But otherwise, we wish you a pleasant rest of your day. And again, thank you so very much for being here. And thanks, Tweety.